Hi, welcome to a new video about electronic reporting, where we are going to see in a real example. It's just a requirement I had in my work as a consultant to create an Excel from the CustInvoiceTrans. But the important thing is that we are going to learn a few new functions of ER that are AllItemsQuery, ListDistinct, ListJoin. We are going to see how to create properly the Excel template, and we are going to learn a lot more things that are very useful and that you might also find in your daily work, as I did. So just join me, and I hope you enjoy and learn something with me. Let's say we have a requirement to export the customer invoice transactions, so the lines of the customer invoice journal, with the charges in Excel. So we can do a nested structure, like having header, charges in header, lines, charges to lines, but we have to have a list of all the lines of all the CustInvoice transactions, and another list or another Excel table of all the charges. So let's see, for example, we have here two invoices that have, the two of them have one charge at header level, and one of them have also one charge at line level. We will see it later. So the first thing is, as always, creating our model. Okay, designer, and just create a different notes that we're going to use. We can call it customer invoice trans report. So yeah, the idea is to create a report to export them in Excel. So we're going to have two tables, so two different record lists. The first one is going to be the CustInvoice transactions, okay, and the second one is going to be the charge codes. Oh, I didn't meant to do it. A child of them, they're siblings actually. Charge codes. Okay. So now we are going to, for making it easier or faster, simpler, we're going to directly map the model, this model that we've created, to the data source. That's to the actual table for exporting. We could create, as you may know, for other videos, we could create a different model mapping and use a different ER object for this model mapping, but in this case we're not going to do it. So we're going to export the CustInvoiceTrans transaction, and we are going to filter our report directly in the CustInvoiceTrans data source. So CustInvoiceTrans, all this example, CustInvoiceTrans, and ask for query. This will allow, when we execute this report, this ask for query will allow us or the user to put some filters on it. And okay, so all this example is to show you a few, because this is very similar to a real requirement I had, and I needed to use three useful functions that are the AllItemsQuery, the ListJoin, and the ListDistinct. So this example, I think it's good for that. So the CustInvoiceTrans that are going to come with some filtering. So here we are going to already have our filtered data source. We are going to bind it here. We're going to bind the invoice date, I like to always click on show name first for that. Invoice date, okay. Invoice ID, but I think it's going to here, and the item ID. Remember, CustInvoiceTrans are actually the lines. That's why we have the item ID. So now we want to get the markup trans related to CustInvoiceTrans. I mean, related to the lines, but also we need the ones related with the journals. So if I go all the way from here, CustInvoiceTrans, and I go to the header through the relations, and I go to the CustInvoiceYour, this is not going to be enough, because this will, if I get the markup transcode from here and I map it to here, something like this, if I do something like this, we go to the markup trans and we just do this, this is not going to work at all, because this is going to just get the CustInvoiceTrans relations first header, and it's going to get the markup trans of the first header only, not even the lines and not even the rest of the headers. So what we need to do is to get first we're going to get the lines related charges. How we do that? We just go to relations. This is the relations directly from the lines. So we go to the relations, markup transcode, sorry, markup trans. This data source is going to be the charges related to the lines. But what line? If I don't do anything else, it's only going to be to the first line in our data source. So what we're going to do is to create a calculated field to be able to use the AllItemsQuery. The AllItemsQuery, if I create a new calculated field, let's call it markup trans CustInvoiceTrans. We can go here and do AllItemsQuery and get basically from the relation, one too many, from the relation from the CustInvoiceTrans, I'm going to get all the related markup trans, not just the first one like ER does. If you are not inside, let's see it here. Okay, if I would have the markup trans here inside, for every CustInvoiceTrans, it will, if I map directly to the related markup trans, it will get for every single CustInvoiceTrans the related markup trans. But in our structure, we can't have a multi-level structure. So we need to have it in the main node. That's why we need to not only get the related to the CustInvoiceTrans that is active, let's say that way, but we need to get all of them. That's why we need to use the AllItemsQuery, because I am not going to be inside any node that it's bound to the CustInvoiceTrans. So it will just get the first record, and that's it. With this AllItemsQuery, I am going to get all the markup trans that are related to the CustInvoiceTrans. That's the first step. Now, how we do it for the header? Well, for the header, it's going to be a little bit harder. And what we need to do is do the same we've done here. to get all the headers, because if we don't do that, if we go directly to try to get all the markup trans related to the CustInvoice year, it will get all the markup trans related to the first CustInvoice year. So let's first get all the CustInvoice years and then all the markup trans. So we can again do our formula for AllItemsQuery, and we can get the, alright, let's go through here. Remember, in this case we need to use the less than, because we are going from the lines to the header. So the relation is we need the greater than, because we have many lines related to one header. So we are going to find our relationship here in the CustInvoice year. But we need to use the CustInvoice in this case relation. I don't think with the CustInvoice year it's working, not sure. What I know is that when I used the CustInvoice year, it didn't work, and I had to use the CustInvoice. I don't know why, but trust me and use the CustInvoice. Just it works better. And so with this, we will have all the CustInvoice year records related to our CustInvoiceTrans. That's the first step. And here you are the next formula or the next function I wanted to show you, that it's here we get all the items related to our CustInvoiceTrans that are all the CustInvoice years. But what if we have many lines? We're going to have, for every line, it's going to get all the CustInvoice years, so we're going to have duplicates. Solution: the use of a function to remove those duplicates. So CustInvoice year related distinct, and we can just use the function ListDistinct like this. And we have to, if you don't know what function to use, you just go to the functions and go to the function you think it may be eligible for your purpose, and you have a brief description here. Sometimes it's not enough. That's why I record all of these videos explaining them, but it's at least enough to give it a try and see how it works. So for a given selector for every record of a given list, calculates a given selector for every record of a given list and returns the record list containing a single record for each unit. But just remove duplicates. In the key selector, let me check my notes. Yeah, basically you have to provide the key field. In our case, we can use the invoice ID. I think we could even provide the record ID. Let's do it with the record ID. I think in my real example I used the invoice ID, but it would be more like correct to use directly the record ID. So ABCD record, what is it? Record ID, yeah, here you are. With this, because we could have, I know in your system, like I know legally you need to have unique invoice IDs, but the tables allow you to have them because the primary key of the table, or there's no index for the invoice ID that doesn't allow duplicates. So with the rec ID, I would sleep better. Okay, so now we have all the customer invoice years that are related to the customer invoice trans that the user is going to filter, but without duplicates. Now let's get the markup trans markup transactions, so the charges related to our CustInvoiceTrans our CustInvoice journals. So again, another calculated field. It is, we can call it markup trans CustInvoice year. And as you may have already figured out, we're just going to get the related markup trans, but also to not only get the first one, the first record, we need to use the AllItemsQuery again. So this AllItemsQuery is something you probably haven't needed to use it until suddenly in a specific report with this weird configuration where you have to have two different lists at the same level and reuse the filtering of one of the data sources, and you need to use it 4 times. That's ER. Yeah. So we have now the markup trans CustInvoiceTrans and the markup trans CustInvoiceTrans. So both of them are basically markup trans, so they are exactly the same structure because they are the same tables. So what we can do is to make a union query of them. That would be the third function we are going to see today, that it's the ListJoin. So yeah, we can just create a new, that would be markup trans ListJoin. Edit formula, we add the ListJoin, and so we can just make the ListJoin. And oh, I forgot to add the dollar, just to know this is a calculated field. Okay, so and the ER, let's say compiler, even when this is not a compiler, but since this is like development, let's say that way, or IntelliSense, or I don't know how to call it, will detect that the markup trans CustInvoice year and the markup trans CustInvoiceTrans are both of type markup trans. So the ListJoin is going to create a new markup trans type data source. So we have basically all we need to just map it with our model. So we can go to markup code, bind. We can go to the value. I'm going to use the calculated amount, because if I use directly the value, when it's a charge that goes with percentage, it's going to just show the percentage, and so we don't want that. We want to just show the money. Tax group was tax group, and the invoice ID. How do we get the invoice ID? Well, that's a really great question. We are going to need to go to the markup trans for the header first, and add a calculated field that it's going to be inside this node. So it's going to be calculated per every single record of this record list. Okay? So let's add this calculated field and let's call it invoice ID. Why do we need to create it at this level? Because the logic to get the invoice ID is going to be different if we are talking about a charge applied to the header or a charge applied to the lines. So edit formula, just go. If you go to add, it's quite useful. I didn't I didn't notice we had this option since not long ago. And let's just go through the relations, going from many to one, and just, we know this is a customer invoice journal related markup trans, so we can use directly this related record and get the invoice ID directly. Save. Okay. Now I don't know why the first time you create a calculated field inside a nested node, it always creates it here at the bottom. But if I save, I go back and I go in again, now it's going to show the very first one, because we have put the dollar sign, so it's going to be the first alphabetically ordered. Yeah, now let's do the same with the customer invoice trans. The other one was related with the CustInvoice year, but here we know there are charges related to the lines. So let's just create it. Let's create it. Invoice ID. And just go to add sign, go to this is not the ones, those are the configuration for the auto charges, but they're not the actual charges of that relation. In fact, we were just looking for this. Great. And here in the lines we also have the invoice ID, so we can use it directly. Invoice ID, where is it? Ah, here. Save. Yep. And that's it. We have our invoice ID created, and now, like magic, let's say, it should appear here. Why? Because this ListJoin is based on two data sources. If I add it to the data sources, it's going to get like to this point, and so we can use this directly for the invoice ID. That will tell our users that this charge goes with this invoice. So now let's save, and I guess we are probably gonna be able to test it. I have tested these two invoices. Let's put date on it. For example, I guess this date will be enough. Let's from this. Oh, I don't know if I can. Well, I can try for this particular date. Okay. Let's check. Let's check with what the model mapping gives to us. We have just one charge code. That's not good. Something we did wrong. Let's go back to the model mapping and check what's wrong. Oh yeah, we didn't change the bind. So yeah, this is great to show you what happens if you directly use the markup trans that is related to CustInvoiceTrans, CustInvoice year. This is going to just show the first, like, if you take a look at this, it's only showing one of the invoices, one of the charges. And this charge is the one related to the first invoice, the first invoice header. So now we are going to justify all the effort we did to create this markup trans ListJoin, because if we don't do that, as you have seen, it's not going to get all the records. Let's now run it again once we have bound it to the correct data source. And now there you are. We have three different charges. One for the first invoice, that it's going to be the freight, and two for the second invoice, that it's going to be freight and other. This other is basically at line level. Let's see it in the UI. So let's see it in the UI, so you can just verify this is working as expected. We go here, we're going to have this at header level, and if we go to the lines, we're going to have this at line level. And as you can see, it's using the calculated amount that it's correct. So now that we have just tested our data model is correct, it's now a matter of creating an Excel template and creating a format. Let's create a format. Export to Excel format. Going to Excel, and oh yeah, we have to first complete this. Initial version, yes. Format, export to Excel, format type Excel, and initial version. Okay. Let's create a template for Excel. For that, we go just here, create an empty template. We are going to create insert table. My table has headers. Okay. Here, we could just let the names here, but just to make the example a little better. All right. Let's just check what we have in the model and create the same fields here. It's invoice date, invoice ID, item ID. And here we just create insert table. Invoice ID, markup code, max group, and daily. Convert to range, yes. Here, convert to range, yes. And in the name manager, not a range. Okay, so here what we would do actually is to create in the name manager. We can do it this way: invoice date label. Okay. Okay. Then we could create here invoice ID label. once we've added all the labels, we can create a, for example, parent for invoice labels. So this is going to make our format mapping look easier, because we're going to have nested elements, and everything will be better order. In this case, we probably wouldn't need it, so it's simple. But when you start like working, for example, in actual reports, for the invoice reports or things like that, everything's nested, so it's easier. And also we could just, for example, not show anything there. We can click here and create a range that it's all the labels, and a range that is all the values. And for example, if there's no records, we just hide the values and things like that. Now we need to create a for invoice trans values. This is really important, because this range that I've created, I am going to put I am just realizing that we are going to this, if we have two records like we have, it's going to be duplicated, so this is going to be affected. So we can't have this at the same level as this, because this is going to be duplicated. And so what we need to do is, let's put the charges below, and when we move something like we did, we have to now check that everything we created is still pointing to the same, and we can see it is, because this is pointing to invoice ID markup, so it's working. And you can just check here. Now it's mapped to the B4 E4. This is invoice label. Okay, that's correct. Markup, yeah, everything is pointing to where it should. So fine. Now let's create here values, charges, values, and okay, and we have all the labels but none of the values, I guess. We have, yeah. So now it's a matter of labeling every single value cell like this, doing, for example, invoice date value, and the same with everyone. You could directly create the name in Excel like this, and it's going to work fine. But be very careful with that, because if you are not careful and you try to change the name, for example, now let's say I wanted to change it to here, then you're fucked up. Because if you check, we have the invoice ID value pointing to the C2, and if we go to the old name, it's still there, so it doesn't replace what you had before. And if you have two different names to the same sheet, sheet cell, it's going to fail. It's going to miserably fail, and you're going to, because the error is going to not be that much descriptive. So I am just always use the name manager for creating new things and changing things. Just be aware of that. Okay, so we have labeled all our different cells and ranges of cells. So we should be able now to just import template. Let's call it Excel template CustInvoiceTrans. Okay. In this case, I need to move it. My local VM. this. There you are. And now let's just have our format. It's going to be empty. Here we are going to have the model with our information, but here we are not going to have any structure to map it with. So we need to create it from the Excel we just built. Okay, perfect. And as I told you, if we create like parent ranges, it's going to be more organized. Like we have the invoice labels that I am not going to use labels now, but if I wanted to use labels, it's as simple as once you have the label, you have to do it like this. Something like this. Okay, so now it's getting the label. It's failing because it doesn't work. But the idea would be to add the labels like this. Add, and then in double quotation marks the rest of the label. Label file, column, and the label ID. The idea is always using labels for anything that it's just not a value that you're going to map with something in the model. So it's good. So your report is multi-language, of course. Now for the InvoiceTrans values, we need to tell the Excel the replication direction. Hey, it's getting it. That's nice. We don't want replication direction for the invoice labels, nor for the charge label. So now we're good. We can map with our CustInvoiceTrans the invoice date, the invoice ID, and the item ID. And with this, we map it to the charge codes, invoice, yeah, the mapping is obviously 1-to-1 always because we've created the model for that. And now it is done. Everything's done. So now let's just test it. Let's run the format. Oh, I think this should be 29th in our case. Yes, let's check with this. And there you are. Sorry, I couldn't visualize it because I need to open it in my laptop. There you are. Two different lines, one for each invoice ID, and two charges, one per each header and one charge to the line, getting the invoice ID, getting the correct replication. So yeah, that's it. Now you are a step ahead in terms of creating Excels, in terms of using formulas for the model mapping. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did recording it and editing it, and just see you in next videos. Goodbye.